Well, everyone, welcome to Wi-Fi Wednesday. I am joined today by Mr. Steve Pallas, who is the Midwest sales manager based out of the Twin Cities in Minneapolis. Steve, how you doing today?
Doing well, everybody. Thanks, Kevin.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. This is really uh, section one of 8 total webinars that we plan on doing. We deemed it Wi-Fi Wednesday. So every Wednesday starting today for the next 8 weeks, we're going to take this animal that is Hydrawise and we're going to salami slice it into 8 sections and deliver it to you so that it's easily digestible and recordable so that you can implement and train your own staff and take it to the streets and hopefully have a lot of success with it in 2020. So today is really about the what, the why, the when, and the how to get into the Hydrawise game. I'm going to slightly skew those. I personally like to start off with the why. If I could for a moment here, jumping into our first slide, I pulled this up. I know it's 3 years old. This was posted November 3rd, 2017, but I found some interesting data here. So globally, they're saying 3.2 connected devices per person in 2017. And what I found interesting is the age demographic, whether you were as young as 16 or as old as 64, there was only 1/10 of a difference in how many connected devices. So it doesn't look like this is just a young man's game or young lady's game by any means. And then when we look at the income aspect of things, whether you're in the bottom 25 percentile for income or the top 25, it only is separated by 1.2 connected devices per person. When we look at gender, it's almost dead even. Again, this data being almost 3 years old. Now, if we jump ahead for a brief moment here and we look at NCTA released some data last year, February 19th. So remember in 2017, it was 3.2 per person. As of February 1st, 2019, we're looking at 8 connected devices per person globally. And where it's headed is 13.6. So other data that I wanted to show you globally, and Steve, I know you're a hockey guy. I like hockey as well, although the Blackhawks haven't done much for me recently. But I think it was Wayne Gretzky who put it best when he said, hey, really good hockey players, they play where the puck's at, right? And by today's standards, 2020 globally, we're looking at 30 billion connected devices with a B. In the next 5 years, if any of you don't plan on retiring in the next 5, and I know I don't, great hockey players play where the puck's at. Elite hockey players, they play where the puck's going to be. In 2025, we're looking at an increase of more than doubling. We're looking at over 75 billion connected devices. So everything in our world is interfacing with that little cell phone, right?
Kevin, that's a great stat.
Thank you, Steve. And you know, when we sometimes I think as industry professionals, we sit back and we go, why would our customers ever need to control their irrigation system from their phone? And the truth of the matter is the need is not the driver in this case. I think what the driver is 100% cell phone, smartphone obsession. Now, if we're in Germany, they call it a handy, Steve. So what you got is everybody's got one of these handies in their hand. They're paying in upwards of $1,000 for this device. The data plan annually is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000 to $1,500. That $2,500 investment is made before they pay the mortgage, buy groceries, or diapers for their children, because it's not an option, it's a must-have. And every single thing that they can have interfacing with that device just solidifies the 4.5+ hours a day, 100+ times a day that their faces are buried in the phone. Now, I'm not here to say it's a good thing or a bad thing. All I'm looking at is the fact that it's created a tremendous opportunity, which I think as an industry, we've fallen very short of recognizing that cell phone obsession and how much they don't know that they don't need it per se, but they want it if it talks to their phone. Because it's cool. Anything that talks to your phone feels good. Now, the what is Hydrawise comparatively speaking to the other offerings in this space, and there are over 30 plus Wi-Fi irrigation controllers out there, and they all feel good, right? Because they all talk directly to someone's smartphone. The difference here, and I'm only going to touch on 3 subjects, which I think are the highest wave tops in the difference between feeling good and actually doing good, right? And the first 2 that I'm going to speak to is hydraulics, water flow, and then electrical integrity of an irrigation system. Today, if any of your customers have an issue with either one of those, the way you're going to recognize it is it's going to come in the form of a phone call, probably 2 to 3 weeks after the actual incident occurred where the electrical integrity failed or they had a broken head, stuck pipe. And when they call in, they're not real happy about it, right? They've got a high water bill, they've got damaged landscape, and they want to blame somebody. By interfacing with Hydrawise hardware, Hunter controllers that talk on that platform, and having something like a flow meter in play, we now have our arms entirely around the electrical integrity of the system to know about broken wires, bad solenoids, anything of that nature, clogged pipe, broken heads, cracked nipples, real time, so that now you can contact your customer proactively before they even know they have an issue, right? And schedule a billable service call. So it allows you to bring a level of service to your customer base that never existed before this product.
Kevin,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to put this in a reactive portion of being reactive or proactive. If we're reactive, we're not making our customers happy. Proactive, we can contact the homeowner or property manager and tell them before something destroys our landscaping. Proactive and being reactive. Proactive, you're making money. Reactive, we're losing money.
Yeah, great point. And you know, one thing I failed to mention, I will real quickly, is in addition to that, it's tandem notification, right? So when you do reach out to your customer to tell them about the issue they have on their property, through the software, they can see a log of that alert as well. So they don't think you're trying to drum up work that's not warranted. Those are 2 of the points. The third one I'm going to make is using hyper local weather data and applying it to the existing irrigation program, which, you know, pulling contractors all over the United States, it seems like we all want to water on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, somewhere between 25 and 40 minutes for rotors, 10 to 15 for sprays. So we're not going to mess with that. Keep doing what you're doing. There's water restrictions, things you have to color within the lines of, okay? What we do is we use hyper-local weather information to apply it to the existing schedule you have in play, just to make intelligent decisions about when to irrigate, when not to irrigate, or when to perhaps decrease or increase the cycle time based upon the microclimate in your customer's yard. And what the software does for you is actually shows you reduction of scheduled irrigation based upon the controller adhering to those microclimate adjustments that you set up, right? And this information can be sent out to your customers. Many use it for charging monitoring fees. And we have an app update coming in April that you'll be able to checkbox clients that you want, and it will automatically send this content out to them. So you don't have to do it on a one-off basis, which is a big thing for us in terms of the software development. Now, Steve, if I could talk to the when real quick. I like to use an analogy my grandfather told me long ago. And he said, Kevin, when's the best time to plant a tree? And I said, I don't know. And he goes, 20 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today. And I suggest that everyone take action today. Steve and I could talk for hours about the software, and we will in the webinar series. But when we talk about the how, rather than Steve or I that work for Hunter Industries, I pulled in a contractor by the name of Eric Huxdorf, who owns DJ's Lawn Sprinkler out of Milwaukee. 2 years ago, he had little to none experience with Hydrawise, and he had some experience with Wi-Fi controllers. And what I'm going to do is transition now to a pre-recorded interview that I had with Eric last week. And I want to play it for you. There'll be a few pauses in there for some color because there's some good insight that comes out of it that I'm going to elaborate on. But I'm going to make that transition right now. When I got a call from Eric, I was down in St. Louis, and he called me up and he said, Kevin, I hate plowing snow. And he didn't use that language. He actually used, some words I can't use live on the webinar today. But, and I'm sitting there back like, okay, what do you want to do? And at that point in time, it was pretty infant stages for Eric using Hydrawise. At that point, it was in his toolbox for residential sales calls, and he could speak to the percentage that he was closing at that point. But I thought it's important to get some real world experience and advice from somebody who's taken it from conception to building it into a pretty good sized portion of the business. So Eric, if you just want to kind of like speak to from that point up to now,
Absolutely.
What have you seen? What have you done? What's working?
Well, it was like you said. It was I'd gotten personally myself out of plowing, and my partner, who's my younger brother, was still doing it just with a couple guys. I mean, we were only doing 50,000-60,000 a year in snow plowing. Just just kind of went down to something to do. Just some supplemental income to take care of some of the bills over winter. And, it was, three pieces of equipment and a couple guys, shoveling, two guys that would go out and shovel the sidewalks that needed to be done on these accounts. So, as it just progressed, I mean, my guys just dreaded it, above and beyond me hating it. I plowed snow since I was 16 years old. I'm going to be 40 years old this fall. So since I've been driving, I've been in a plow truck, and it was just time for me to get out. Employees are starting to feel the same way. A lot of my guys, are my guys that have been with me a long time. They're my reliable guys. Well, as you're seeing a lot in the industry, those are the guys that are getting a little bit older. And they don't want to be out doing snow if they don't have to. So I made the decision to pull a pin and bail on snow plowing for a year and find ways to supplement that income during the season, or another way to do it in the off season, which to me was upgrading controllers to Wi-Fi. For 20 years, I sat in my office and conversated and thought about how can we sell customers something irrigation related over winter rather than just being dead and stale. And we tried, back in the early 2000s, we tried gift cards and selling systems for Christmas, and we beat the drum every way we possibly could, and just realized the fact that people aren't thinking about irrigation in Wisconsin in winter. It's just not happening. But the Wi-Fi is attractive enough, and if it's pursued correctly and marketed correctly, it's a perfect time, and it's so easy. It's so much better than snow in the fact that we can do things at our leisure. We're not hanging irrigation controllers on Christmas Eve at 7 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock in the morning. We're hanging irrigation controllers at Monday through Friday at whatever time we want. 10 o'clock in the morning, and at our leisure, at our schedule, because we're not busy.
So when you did that, like the first step, who did it happen? Obviously not organically. You had to take action. What were your action steps in terms of how you marketed it to your customer base? And then did you look just within your customer base, or did you go outside of that?
So timing wise, I mean, we still send our annual service contracts to our existing customer base, and those still go out. Snail mail, call it what you want, U.S. postal mail. It's just an envelope with our annual contract in it. We do also utilize email, obviously, as the rest of the world does, but typically, if it comes in the mail, the customers are going to get it. They're going to open it, right away. And we just, oddly enough, seen, instant success with people getting the stuff and paying attention to it. So it actually came on quickly, because when I made that decision to go was when I was sending out the contracts, and by go, I mean send out that first marketing campaign. It was, hey, we're going to be stuffing these envelopes anyhow. Why not throw in a mailer with these, just introducing our customers to the Wi-Fi. For me, I didn't jump in it early, because I'm the kind of guy that doesn't like to jump on a trend. As you know, Kevin, I like to beta test things. I like to hang, I had that controller hanging in my garage for a year before I marketed it to any of my customers. I don't like to market something that I don't trust. So for me, once I saw the value in it that first year, I knew that I was 100% comfortable with mass marketing this to all my existing customers. And that's what we did. So that first year we did, those went out late, I want to say late January. And number-wise, I'm going to say we did probably 35, 40 of them right off the bat, up until our season started. And you got to remember, we didn't start our season until the end of April last year because of the April 20th snowstorm. But so we had all of April that we were still, marketing and doing Wi-Fi upgrades because there's nothing else to do.
So year one with that mail piece, did you come close to your snow revenue, or have you now in year two during the winter? I mean, where's it sit today? After going through it now, this would be your second winter of marketing. And did your strategy change? Was it still just snail mail? Or?
Well, it's not just so much right now. As you know, we talked about the marketing campaign that I just did with sending, the email campaign. I sold 18 controllers the first 12 hours. Just off the email. That's correct.
With that email, was there a ton of content, a lot of visual imagery, just a couple of bullet points? Because I always feel like everybody's attention span to email is short, so you got to, make it quick and simple.
Hardly any visual. It was really just, expressing to them that, we've tried it, we've tested it and we trust it, and I think a lot of our customers, they trust us. They trust us in their house. They trust us with their system. If we back it, and a lot of them know that I don't just jump into something, us as a company, we don't just jump into a product. And I stress that to them, to my customers. And it's just, the demand is there. I mean, it's the customers that are calling, it's not a question. I maybe 10% of the customers who call, are looking for some additional information above and beyond what they can learn from Hydrawise.com. But the ones that are calling, the ones that are reaching out are saying, hey, I want to get scheduled.
Nice. So in winter of 1920, did you achieve your goal of meeting or exceeding your snow revenue by just doing Wi-Fi controller retros?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say I was close, but I set a high goal, and I mean, it was close. I mean, without a doubt, exceeded just by the upsell on, installations over the summer as well. I mean, we like I said, we got a late start. So now this last winter, I mean, I think we're at, probably, I'm going to say we're 40, 50 just on upgrades right now.
Just in the year.
Yeah, just over this last off season.
And your only energy was adding a flyer to your winter invoice or spring contract and sending an email blast.
That's correct. Yeah, I'm going to follow up on the email as well. So we had a success rate of about 50% of, it's been about a week now, and 50% of the emails that we sent out in our email campaign have been opened.
Okay.
About 55%. So there's still a significant amount out there, and as we watch and see they're opened, we're getting phone calls. We're seeing clicks to our website.
So just to be clear, what I heard from you earlier was you said email blast, first 12 hours, 18 controllers sold from the email.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. It was pretty wild. It was, and I was taking a lot of those. I guess the big thing I would say is have somebody who's educated on the controllers ready to go. If you do a big email campaign like that, don't just, if your office gals aren't educated enough to answer questions on it, I would say have somebody there that can grab the phone, because you're going to have some customers. In that first part, we were having customers that they wanted to speak intelligently about it, but their intention was to get scheduled, but they wanted their questions answered. So you're going to get results, but just be prepared to answer some questions intelligently.
So Steve, I'm going to jump back here for a moment, if I could, to our PowerPoint presentation. Can you hear me okay, Steve?
We hear you perfectly, Kevin.
Beautiful. Well, I want to add just a little bit of color to what Eric's covered so far in the phone interview, and I want to elaborate on it. So the two pieces that I want to touch on is some other examples of what contractors have done in terms of marketing, although not that different from Eric, because it's been either traditional mail or email blast. Those have really been the only two avenues that I've seen anyone use, but they're all having a greater degree of success with it. So I want to share a couple of those with you. Then I also want to speak to his second point about having somebody in staff in the office that can speak intelligently to the product. And I want to point everyone in the right direction where they can get that information and digest it easily. So first one that comes to mind is Carefree Systems out of the Chicagoland area, New Lenox to be exact. This was 2 years ago, 2018. Mike Strick, the owner of the company, after training up the guys and putting in a few, put out an email blast to his customer base at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. And by 5 p.m., he had sold double-digit controllers. And in the first 2 months, Mike had installed 80 irrigation controllers off of an email blast, okay, in the month of August. This is a little social media post that Mike made. I think it speaks for itself. I'm not going to read it to you, but I'll leave it up there for a brief moment. But my point being is Eric, Mike, they're no different than anybody else listening in. The only difference was they took action, okay? Training is very important. That's what we're here for. That's what this webinar mini series H2H is about. I'm going to share with you one other success story real quick on the screen.
Hey, Kevin?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. I didn't see your screen change. I'm still on the DJ Lawn Sprinklers advertising.
Okay. Bear with
Now
me.
Kevin's down in the basement, so his Wi-Fi might be as good as what we have in the Minneapolis area. But
Steve, that's what you're there for. So can you see my screen now?
I can see you and the screen perfectly.
Well, I'm sorry about me. The screen's on point though. So this is the post that I mentioned Mike had put up, and it's just showing that out of 188 of his clients on board with Hydrawise, he had saved them a ridiculous amount of water that equated to over $11,000 in reduction in water bills. I mean, that's real information that the software calculates for you automatically. And now in April, it's going to push that content out to your customers. So that's one case. The other one, if I put up here a little George Patton quote, a good plan violently executed now trumps a perfect plan a week later. No company that I work with embodies that statement more than Professional Irrigation Systems out of St. Louis, Missouri. They were early adapters to Hydrawise. Again, marketing almost 100% digitally. In less than 3 years, their closure rate for Wi-Fi irrigation controllers on new systems is 80%. That's how many controllers go in residentially that are Wi-Fi. And in less than 2.5 years, in excess of 1,000 units installed. Talking with John Lauer, the owner of the company, over the Christmas holiday, he did an email blast in December I thought was ingenious, marketing, what do you get dad for Christmas? The guy who has everything. How about a Wi-Fi irrigation controller? North of $20,000 in controller upgrades off of a December Christmas email marketing campaign to his customer base. So email using something like Constant Contact. There's a bunch of services out there that are relatively inexpensive. We help you as a manufacturer. What I want to point out, when you hang up or you get off this webinar, I'm going to encourage you to go to hunterindustries.com. Click on the professionals tab at the top, a little off center. Then you're going to get a drop down. I want you to click on contractors, right? And then from there, build your own marketing material. We help all you small business owners. We know not everybody has an in-house marketing department, right? So as your trusted partner, we're going to provide that for you. When you click on build your own marketing material, there's an option for email templates. We have 3 Hydrawise specific email templates where you can pull your company logo in, your verbiage, and then use that template to blast it out to the masses and see if you can have some degree of success, which I know you will, beyond a shadow of a doubt. The second thing I want to speak to before we get back to the interview is having someone trained in the office. Eric put a lot of stress and emphasis on that. And it's important because if your email blast goes out, somebody calls in, they're ready to buy, but they have a couple of general questions. If your person in the office answering the phone stumbles on those, you might miss the sale, right? So training.hunterindustries.com. There is a course called Hydrawise Specialist. This was specifically designed for in-office personnel. It consists of 5 training modules, right? Overview of Hydrawise controllers, controller hardware setup, software setup, contractor portal, and then Wi-Fi irrigation controller comparison, just so you can be compared in case the homeowner's done some research on their own. You can speak intelligently to the product, right? In addition to that, if you've ever gone to our Hunter homepage, hunterindustries.com, if you scroll down to the bottom on the left-hand side, there's a tab for video library. Type in Hunter Hydrawise Wi-Fi irrigation controller. The video you see on my screen right now is under 2 minutes. It's 1 minute and 59 seconds. And it's directed towards a homeowner that knows nothing about Wi-Fi irrigation controllers, and it gives them the highlight reel of what Hydrawise and you as their contractor are going to provide for them in this upgrade to this controller. So it's a great one to just email or text out to your clients, maybe after that phone call to the office. At this point though, I am going to transition back to our video or to our interview with Eric. So stand by for one brief moment. Understood. Well, Eric, we can't thank you enough for your time here today and just your being opening up and being totally honest with your experience with it. We really, Greg and I work for Hunter. Everybody knows we're going to say it's great. So we wanted a third party that wasn't involved in it, has been for a few years, and you're a perfect example of what success looks like with this product. And
Kev, yeah, that I've gone through some of the other manufacturers' controllers. Some of my horror stories, and in the beginning, like I told you, when Hydrawise first came out, it just seemed like a lot. It just seemed to me when we were sitting in that conference that it just but once I sat with you and understood truly what everything was, I mean it's a no-brainer. There is no question in my mind that it is the best Wi-Fi controller on the market and the easiest to use. The connectivity is so simple, and if you have anybody that needs to discuss how easy it is to connect the controller, my brother Aaron's probably averaging 30 minutes to 40 minutes on a complete swap out installation to set up. I mean, he's to the point where he's just flying through these things.
Well, that's good to hear. And I always use myself as an example. I mean, I'm a pretty primitive creature. So if I can teach other people how to program it and run it, I'm quite certain.
Oh yeah.
Not a person walking the face of this earth that's not.
And my service techs are begging me to sell nothing but Hydrawise controllers. I mean, now that they've gone through, a season and a half of turn-ons and blow-outs and service, they're just praying that every job they get to is a Wi-Fi. And then when they're looking through their list, they're like, yes, okay, this one's a Wi-Fi, this one's a Wi-Fi. they see, the time savings that they have in Hydrawise and being able to do everything that they need to do from the field. I mean, it's to the point now where, it's been an optional upgrade for me, and now it's an optional downgrade. If a customer's looking to save a little bit of money, well, we could take Hydrawise out of the equipment. Well, no, I don't want to do that. So, I mean, it's just I included it. I don't include. I still show it as a separate line item, but I took optional right out of the equation, and it's now just upgrade to Hydrawise Wi-Fi controller. And awesome. I've never had anybody ask to remove it.
So I want to hit on one of the wave tops you just hit right there, service techs. In the early on stages, did you have any blowback? Do you have a couple of gray-haired service guys?
Oh, you always do. Yeah, you always do. I mean, service guys hate change. They hate change, and they hate, they never want to, they never want to absorb any kind of change, whether it's positive or negative. But once they saw the value in it, I mean, in Wisconsin, a lot of our controllers are in the basement. So, having to go in and out of a house, kicking your shoes off, to essentially having a remote for every single one of your customers on your hip, without having to physically hook up a remote is a no-brainer. I mean, once my guys started using it, they fell in love with it immediately. They more or less kind of balked at the concept, but the second they started using it, every single one of my techs were forcing me to get the app on their phone and get them set up right away.
Nice.
So,
well,
it's huge. I mean, it makes your guys look, more professional, just to be able to show up on a job site, and for my office staff, last fall we had customers that called and said, can I just shut the water off? I have a Hydrawise. You guys sold me the Wi-Fi controller. Can I just shut the water off and you guys can blow it out whenever you're in the neighborhood? Absolutely. Absolutely, you can. Shut the valve off in the basement. We mark it down as water's off, and now we can go winterize that system at any time at our convenience.
Did you have any over the course of where you get a homeowner calls in, maybe they weren't, the catalyst behind the Hydrawise was more or less the hands-free function than they wanted to play with it? So did you get anybody calling during the season and say, hey, can you guys just, it's a little too wet on zone 5, or we're having a party this weekend, can you shut it down? Did any of that happen, or do the homeowners all really engage with the software themselves?
They're either all in or they're not. It seems like the guys that are engaging with it are the more techie, kind of tech savvy guys that don't want to learn it. Your engineers and things like that. The other customers just see the value in the predictive watering, and still, a big thing that I sell to the customers, look, you can be as engaged in this as you want. It's no different than a traditional irrigation controller in the fact that we still set it to water on your traditional watering schedule starting at 4 a.m. and so you still have that comfort of waking up in the morning and saying, is the edge of my driveway wet? Okay, my system ran. Because a lot of our customers just get in that habit of, at the edge of the pavement or the edge of the sidewalk's wet, my system ran this morning. They just get into that habit. They can still do that, only now, you're going to know that this controller is going to do everything that every homeowner is supposed to do, but none of them do. And that's water less in the spring, more in the heat of the summer, less in the fall, and don't water when it's going to rain or has rained. And this controller does all that.
The greatest dial position never used, right? Seasonal adjustment.
Exactly right. That's always been we've always been a big proponent of pushing that to our customers, and maybe 10% of our customers would take advantage of seasonal adjust. They just, for whatever reason, it's just 95% of my customers from the time we turn their system on in the spring till the time we blow it out in the fall do not even touch their irrigation controller. And it blows my mind. But, now they can. I mean, with Wi-Fi, it's with Hydrawise, it does what they're supposed to do.
And Eric, you'll be even happier to hear next month we are rolling out an update to the software where you'll be able to automatically select clients where you want a synopsis of their reports and their water savings pushed out to them on a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly basis, and Hydrawise will actually send that content to them to frame up what the software and what your company is actually doing for them in terms of savings.
That's awesome. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Right on. Well,
any word on the suggestion as far as the push notification, just letting the customers know, hey, your system did not water this morning because of Hydrawise savings?
So that is something that's been discussed, and actually Monday I will be on my monthly conference call for Hydrawise software development, along with a handful of other sales guys, Anthony Long, the product manager, and Cameron, the main software engineer. And that is one of the requested items on the list. I mean, for me and you, I say, hey, I'd love it if the software could do this. And to me, it's super simple. To you, it is too, right? On the backside and how the software is already written, some changes are a lot easier to implement than others. But I mean, it's on the list, and I encourage everybody, keep the feedback.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna. You know me.
Yeah,
that's just the one thing. I mean, that's probably my biggest thing is if a customer could, the first thing I always do is, I need information. The first thing I do is look to my phone. A customer looks outside, and I got a tree in the middle of my backyard that on my way to the shower in the morning, I look out the window, I see that tree is wet, just subconsciously. But I see that tree, the trunk of that tree is wet, I know my irrigation system ran. If that isn't wet,
you're wondering why.
Yeah, I'm wondering why. And my fear is that a customer's first instinct is something's wrong. It would just be nice to have that reassurance, and it would make both of us as a contractor, you guys as the manufacturer, if that customer could look at their phone, because they're going to go to their app. Before they even go to the app, there's a push notification there that says, hey, your sprinkler system didn't water today because Hydrawise just saved you water off your this month's water bill or something.
All right, Steve. I'm going to switch gears back here. That's the conclusion of the interview with Eric. What I'd like to do at this point, if we could, is I want to take some questions. I know Chris Foster, our regional sales manager, has been on the call the entire time.
So I have the first question in, is are contractors typically installing smart meters or water meters with the Hydrawise system?
So I'll speak to my personal experiences, and I would encourage Steve to drop in on this as well. New installations, I am seeing a very high percentage of flow meters installed because it is hardwired today. So you have to run that wire from the flow meter itself to the controller. I am seeing a bit of a transition in location of controller and flow meter. The flow meter is brass, check local codes, but the markets I'm in Illinois and St. Louis Metro allow for that flow meter to be installed right before point of connection. In doing so, now we have our eyes around the entire system, including the backflow. So if the backflow is dumping, even though the controller is not cycling, the meter picks up that activity and tandem reports that to the contractor and end user to say, hey, I know you're not running irrigation right now, but you're flowing 10 gallons per minute. So at least at that point, the contractor can reach out to the homeowner, tell them to turn it off. A couple local municipalities have actually approved the Hydrawise flow meter and the data it collects as a deduct meter, so they don't have to pay on the sewer charge. I've dealt with 3 or 4 now that have had that case. On existing controllers, very small percentage going with the flow meter, just because it's too difficult to give a fixed number to it. Plumbing, cutting into it, running the wire, having the ability to run the wire might mean punching another hole through the wall. So really, really low on conversion. New installation, really high. Does that answer your question?
The same thing. On the new installation, I have seen an uptick in the last year or two on the new installation. The existing systems that are being upgraded to the Hydrawise platform, very few at this point, just due to the what you've described in the additional cost.
Here's another one. I'm going to direct this to Palace because the ending of it is Go Vikings. Jake Ashford is asking, when customers sell upgrades over the winter, are they including a visit during the following spring to verify functionality?
I would probably suggest that as a irrigation professional. Hopefully you've installed that on an existing customer of yours underneath your umbrella. So you have to go out there doing a startup anyway. So that's probably when I would perform that checkup on that smart Wi-Fi controller out there. So, but yes, I would definitely, if I install it in the off season, I would make sure I do have a second visit in my estimate.
And this is probably the most asked question. It is a Wi-Fi clock, so clearly Wi-Fi is going to be an issue. So Richard Malda asked, what's the best solution? I'll direct this to Kevin. What's the best solution for control panels that are far away from a local Wi-Fi connection?
It requires a little bit of MacGyvering, but if you are very far from a Wi-Fi network, outside of the range of upgrading to a mesh network or adding a signal enhancer, aka booster of some type, then there is the option of the hotspot, right? So we're getting a data plan from a internet or from a cell phone provider, and you're looking at roughly smallest data plan you can acquire is about 2 gigs, which is 4 times more than what we need. The Hydrawise controller needs about 500 megabytes a month. And you can buy a hotspot. You know, I use a Verizon Jetpack, but there's many different types. They are not without flaw. I'll just be upfront with that. I've had really good luck, Chris and I, firsthand experience experimenting with the contractor over the winter. We looked at mobile or a modem hotspot. Okay, so you're buying a modem that your SIM card goes into and it plugs into the wall, and then it's hardwired to a router, no differently than you have at your home, an access point, right? Having that in a utility room where they don't have internal batteries, they require outlet the entire time. We're going on 3.5 months without one drop off. And we're kind of prepared for the drop off because we bought routers that we can remotely reset from an application on our phone. But knock on wood, that's worked really well. The independent hotspots that you have right inside the cabinet, about the size of a cell phone, those have intermittent drop off. Some say 3 weeks, some say 6 weeks. You could maybe budget that into your number that you're going to have to be out there once a month. But I really like so far the standalone modem hotspot router combination. But bear in mind, that's a lot more equipment than just a tiny hotspot, so it's going to take up more room. But you can get a hotspot for $100, a data plan depending upon the carrier. High side maybe $30 a month, low side down to about 10. I've seen some even bird dog better deals than that. So it's relatively low cost, but it does require some aftermarket accessories, and it does work.
This one's from Greg Batten. I'm going to direct towards Steve. Hey, Greg, from Indiana. We have a lot of Pro C controllers installed in our current customer systems. Would you suggest doing just faceplate upgrades or change out the entire clock? This is a question that we tend to get a lot.
You can do it almost either way. It depends on what your company policy would like to do. The easiest would be just doing the face pack out there, because we do just have a face pack for the existing Pro Cs. If it's March of 2014 or newer date code, you can just exchange the face pack. If it is newer, or excuse me, older than March of 14, then you need to take the whole controller off the wall and replace it with a whole new controller.
Steve, could you maybe elaborate on that, on where they could find the date code to be able to make that determination? March of 2014, correct?
Yeah, there's 2 ways to do it. One, there is a date code of March of 2014, and usually you find that inside the battery box. The best way to do it is if you open up the face panel and where all your wires come into your modules. If it is a 4-station base controller, you can change the face pack. If it is a 3-station base, you need to take the whole controller off the wall and replace it with a Hydrawise.
Michael has 2 questions. The first one I'll hand over to Steve, and he asks, do you recommend installing Hydrawise clocks on commercial sites?
I would highly recommend it. Again, what Kevin was just talking about, it's called the Wi-Fi smart controller for a reason. And the biggest thing, we have a lot of horses underneath the hood, but without a good Wi-Fi, it's not going to run well. So we need to make sure that we have a strong Wi-Fi signal. And as Kevin alluded to, Series 3 is really going to wrap your arms around the Wi-Fi signal, how to identify it. There are things that you can do if you want to do it before lesson 3 is out. I just did it recently at a local university in the metropolitan area here. I've taken a Hydrawise controller with me, plugged it in at the location where the existing irrigation controller is at right now, and hooked it up to their Wi-Fi and see if it's going to connect well with that controller. And because university, we talk about firewalls and not having enough signal for that controller. Luckily for me and for Hydrawise, it worked perfectly in all 8 locations. And again, if you don't have a good Wi-Fi signal, we can always go back to the hotspot technology to get a good connection to that controller. So yes, definitely you're going to see a lot more savings of water, because on a typical residential, at least in my neck of the woods, we're in that 10 to 15 gallons a minute. Commercially, those systems are running from 20 to 50 gallons a minute. So we're really going to see the water savings add up real quick, not only for you, but for the end user.
The second question from Michael is, and something that I know that we've worked on, speaking of Amazon Web Services, and I'll direct this to Kevin, is he says, I've had issues with latency going from zone to zone remotely, and latency as in time between turning the system on and off. Kevin, could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Now that can be a byproduct of the Wi-Fi signal. The other thing that I would have you check is when you're at the front screen of the controller, if you hit status, controller status, it's going to give you a version number for the firmware, which auto updates via Wi-Fi. They go out periodically, but I want to say if you're not 2.3 or newer, which I think we're on 4.5 right now, there was an upgrade to the reactionary time. So in other words, I'll go long on it, give you the full detail. So the way it used to work is when you opened up your application and you sent a command to manually run a zone, it would go to the cloud, then through their local Wi-Fi network and tell the clock, wake up, it's time to go to work, okay? Once the clock was awake and that signal went back through the software to your mobile device with the app, then the secondary command came out to tell it to turn on. Whereas now, the moment that you open up the application and you go to a client's controller, there's a communication signal being sent immediately to the clock saying, hey, it's time to go to work, okay? And so that cut the reaction time more than in half. So I'd check your firmware, make sure you're 4.0 or newer. If you're not, just call tech service, give them the serial number. You don't need to be in the field. If the clock's connected, just hit controller settings, take a snapshot of the serial number and the firmware, email your Hunter sales manager or call tech support or email them, and they can push a firmware update to it. If that's not the issue, then the Achilles heel is you're dealing with a really bad Wi-Fi signal, or the cell data service you have at that controller location or where you're at in the field is weak as well. It will be one of those 3 contributing factors.
John Dolly, hey John, says, hey Chris, best Wi-Fi product out there, easy to sell. John, thank you very much for those kind words.
Thank you.
And additionally, Greg has another question about monitoring fees, and that's why, we wanted to get a customer's perspective on how they interact and engage with this. And he asks, do you mention monitoring fees when you initially present Hydrawise to your customers? And what has been the feedback? Because that's a lot of the questions that come up from contracting is, how do I monetize this and how do I present it? So I think you both could probably have some insight on that.
Yeah, the answer to your question is 100%. Yes. If you fail to frame up what your company and the Hydrawise software are doing, the service that it provides for your customer, then when you eventually, and I have guys doing this, they don't frame it up. They've got hundreds of clocks in. And I ask them, when are you going to implement the monitoring aspect? And they're like, well, I think next year we're going to do it. We just didn't know what we wanted to charge. And I said, so you mean to tell me if I'm a customer of yours, I've been rolling for free for 2 years, and you're going to send out something telling me now I have to pay a monitoring fee? Even if I loved you as a contractor, it feels like a bait and switch. So I'm going to find somebody else. If you define in the front end, even though you're maybe not charging them, and this is a trend I see a lot, where they'll say, hey, if you want to upgrade on this install to Wi-Fi based controller technology, or you want to upgrade your existing clock, included in year one, included in the upgrade, is 12 months of monitoring. And let me define for you what that means. Basically in bullet points, showing all the things that your company and the software is doing for them. And now with the ability in April, where you'll be able to push content to them, showing water savings and all of their report history, that reiterates what you're actually doing for them. But most didn't know what they wanted to charge. So frame it, tell them what you're doing for them, and let them know the first year is on the arm, and after that, then we have different options. Tiered approach is what I've seen work best. I don't want to steal too much mojo from a later presentation we're going to do about the monitoring, but happy to go deeper if people want to hear.
Kevin, I can't agree with you more. It's awesome. You need to plant that seed when you do the upgrade or the initial install. Include, and plant the seed. So yes, included on the upgrade of your controller or in your new install, your 1 year monitoring fee is included in the price. So next year, when you see my service contract come across snail mail or email, it's going to show the monitoring service or the monitoring fee of X, if it's commercial or residential. So definitely plant the seed at the time of the sale that yes, the 2020 fee is included this year. Next year, you'll see the fee come on my service contract if it's a snail mail or my email.
Chris, do we have more questions?
Yeah, we do. They're coming in. So thank everybody for your input.
Erwin
Schaefer mentions that Kevin's statement about customers knowing more than us in regards to tech stuff is right on the money. For those of us that have been in the industry for 35 plus years, irrigation's not an issue, technology is. So thank you for your input on that.
Yeah, look, I got into the industry because I could dig really well. Okay, if you saw scholastically, I did not excel. And I will tell you that I took one for the team this winter and spent way too many hours online reading GeekWire, consulting with IT professionals so that I could take all that information in and put it in a really easy to digest webinar in 2 weeks that literally, if your people listen to it, they embrace it, they start to use the acronyms and the tech terms. I heard once from a competitor said, if we devalue the services we provide, our customers surely will as well. And when things are devalued, we expect them to be inexpensive. So it's the terms that we use that exude professionalism, even though the homeowner might know as much, perhaps a little bit more. If Steve goes to your house and to install a Wi-Fi irrigation controller, he's shaking his head and says, hey, Mr. Foster, I need to know who your ISP is, what your SSID is, and where your clock's at, because I need to check your RSSI. That pretty much from Jump Street says, I picked the right company to perform the service. Okay, and all I asked was, who's your internet cable provider? What's the name of your network? And I'm going to check the signal strength at your controller location for your Wi-Fi. But using the right terms exudes professionalism, gives that little cushion so the homeowner's not resting his chin on your trap while you're hanging the clock. If that helps, makes sense.
Yeah, Kevin, I'm going to even add on to that. When an irrigation professional proposes a new install, a controller upgrade, residential or commercially, I would suggest, and please use your own terminology, that in your notes, everyone has a scope of work, that the end user must provide a usable Wi-Fi signal for my Hydrawise controller. So we're already making sure that the end user know that he better have Wi-Fi, or hopefully has Wi-Fi, that we can hook our controller up to. So that takes a little bit of the pressure off our shoulders, or traps if it's Kevin, okay? that he has to make sure that he has a usable Wi-Fi signal, because we're not IT guys. Now we're going to become it over the next 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 years in this industry, because our industry is changing overnight in front of us, and we need to jump on that train or it's going to be lost. So in your own words, make sure on your proposal, when you sell it, the end user must provide a usable Wi-Fi signal for my smart controller.
We're going to help you define that. When Steve says usable, we will show you where the resources are online at hydrowisesupport.com, where you can download that, make it a portion of your contract, or I'll give you the simplified, dumbed down version that knuckle draggers like I use, which is more or less 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. It has to be a true open network or a password protected, which is WPA, right? And we have to have a certain amount of signal strength at that location. I'll give you the verbiage in lesson 3 in webinar 3 on exactly how you want to put it on your contracts to cover yourself, because if you don't do your due diligence, it's not your problem, but it's the homeowner's responsibility, but it will become your problem if you fail to address it on the front end.
We'll take a couple more. Dan Siegel asks, can I wire one flow meter to multiple Hydrawise timers on a large property?
No, the answer is no to that. If you've got a large property, you're looking at the absolute Cadillac of irrigation controllers and ACC2. 6 flow meters, directional flow, flow manager, 6 master valves, normally open, normally closed. That's your Huckleberry for applications like that.
And then lastly, Jamie Bowers asks, kind of in the commercial selection controller that we talked about a little bit earlier, is will there be a Hydrawise controller that handles stacking simultaneous station groups? Steve, you want to go ahead and handle that one?
Well, not at this point. I know that it's been talked about behind the scenes and everything, but nothing that we could present or even talk about at this point. I know Kevin, I can see him writing down right now to bring it up again, because this is not the first time that we've heard this. Now, like Kevin said, we do have a commercial controller. The Mac Daddy of all of them is the ACC2 that has all those functionalities in them on a platform called Centralis. But at this point, Hydrawise will not support that on our platform.
And Jamie, just to clarify that too, that is completely based on transformer size. So right now, Hydrawise has a 1 amp transformer or amp and a half. ACC in comparison has a 4 amp transformer. So the ability to run simultaneous station groups is a function of if the transformer is large enough to be able to run all those zones.
Yeah, so you're limited by the size of the transformer. In commercial application, HCC is your baby, because the transformer amperage capacity is cozy enough to execute 2 programs simultaneously. But that is the top of the heap. That's as far as you can go with the Hydrawise software. If it's north of that, ACC2 and Centralis is your answer. And I mean, that controller was IA 2017 product of the year. I mean, that's Dave Schaup's baby, and it's slick. It can do much more than we've ever requested irrigation requirements on any job site I've ever been to. But any more questions, Chris?
I think that just about wraps it up.
Well,
That's awesome.
Take care, everyone. Have a good day.
Be safe, everybody. Thank you very much.